Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great Friday night. This is What's It To Ya with Carter and Jack. A lot of great topics to talk about on this evening's show. We're going to start by taking a look at the Masters, which ended this weekend. Bubba Watson took home his second green jacket. The Tiger didn't play at all, and we'll talk about how much less exciting it was when Tiger was not in the Masters field. In baseball, instant replay is here, but it's become a huge headache, at least earlier in the season. Jack and I debate whether or not it's causing more problems than it is solutions. Our social media question of the week, we're going to talk some NBA playoffs. Jack and I both have our picks for who's going to win the NBA title. That is straight ahead. And in our new segment, we're bringing in one of you to come on and talk some sports with us. Our friend Jake is going to come and we're going to talk some hockey on this week's edition of What's It To Ya, plus my parting shot. The show starts right now. And good evening once again from Columbia High School Studio 1A. This is What's It To Ya. I am Carter Redigo alongside Jack Worth tonight. We've got a lot of stuff to get to, but before we do, I just want to remind you once again that we are keeping it going. We are going to continue this contest that we've been having on Facebook. We're going to be looking on our TV episodes, only on the television. You're going to see a keyword come in on the bottom part of your screen. If you're the first person to post that keyword to our Facebook wall or tweet it at us at Carter and Jack, you will come on the air and join us for a segment on next week's show. So if you're watching right now, keep your eyes peeled. That keyword is coming up. All right. Sports, we're going to talk some golf. That was the biggest story last weekend, the Masters. Bubba Watson took the lead right after the ninth hole and didn't look back. A comfortable three-shot victory. And the big story, for me anyway, was that the Masters ratings hit a 10-year low following this tournament. Tiger Woods was not in the field. There wasn't a huge battle for the final spot for the victory in the Masters. How big of a problem do you think this poses for golf right now, Jack?
Well, I think it's whether or not what we're talking about is good for golf. I think if you're a passionate golf fan, if you've been a fan of the sport for years, you're tuning in every day to every major, I think this isn't a problem. You want to see other guys mixing it up. But if we're talking about golf in mainstream culture, getting the headlines, it is absolutely unquestionably better if guys like Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods are in the hunt. This was the lowest Masters ratings in 10 years. Tiger didn't participate. Phil missed the cut. Bubba Watson, if you're a golf fan, is a guy who's always there. But if you're a casual guy who's on Sunday morning thinking, hey, who's in the hunt for the Masters? It's Bubba Watson. You're less inclined to turn on your TV.
And Bubba Watson, to be fair, he's really entertaining to the casual golf fan. I mean, the way he plays the game, he's got the big pink driver. He'll whack in crazy hook shots. I mean, he's a very entertaining player to watch. I just feel like you need to have not just one entertaining name like Watson, but a couple that are near the top of the leaderboard. The bottom line here is that from the 10th hole on, this was Bubba's tournament and nobody challenged him. So I think it's a combination of that and Tiger not being in the mix, because it's just hard to deny just how much more compelling a major tournament is when Tiger Woods is in the hunt. And this for me poses a big question for golf, because Tiger Woods isn't going to be around forever. And when he's gone, you have to wonder who's going to come in and fill that void.
Well, I think we're seeing what's sort of been a generation of golf fans that's been spoiled over the last 15 years with Tiger's dominance, because it's a sport that, isn't really used to seeing one guy dominate a field like Tiger did for, his 7-8 year stretch in the early part of the 2000s. So Tiger is going to move on. Hopefully golf can adapt by bringing in new sort of a younger group of fans that hasn't grown up seeing, well, Tiger's going to be there, Mickelson's going to be there. And I think now when Tiger and Mickelson aren't there, they're not really sure what to do, because the last 15 years of golf, I think, have been very different than it's been historically.
And I think bringing up younger fans is the key. That's something that Tiger Woods excelled at. I mean, he brought so many young people into the game, myself included, and you have to wonder, where is that going to come from as we look ahead on the PGA Tour? I want to move to America's pastime now. Baseball is in a new era, the era of instant replay, and we've already seen, I was telling you, on the show about how it's going to cause some more problems. And the problems have shown themselves, more specifically in this series between the Yankees and the Red Sox over the weekend. On Saturday, a call of safe on a Dean Anna double was upheld, even though there was a clear angle that said that Anna was out at second. The command center in New York didn't have the angle, and they upheld the call. They said it was inconclusive. And then the very next day, a very, very close play at first base was ruled safe for Francisco Cervelli on a double play. That gave the Yankees the winning run. And then John Farrell rushed it out of the dugout, argued to the umpires and was later fined for saying after the game that he didn't have much faith in the replay system. I disagree with that fine, but do you think that this instant replay system as a whole is causing more problems than solutions right now?
Well, I think first of all, it's still very early in the season. It's the first year. I think right now, I think we can still attribute a lot of the inconclusiveness to the fact that this system hasn't perfectly been set up yet. This is still, they've only been running it for 3 weeks. I mean, even with spring training, it's under 2 months. Going back to the Dean Anna play, it's a play where, yes, the umpires used instant replay, still made the wrong decision. But if without instant replay, they're making the wrong call also. Mm-hmm. So I think if we can get this sort of, we can ease out the kinks in the system, we'll still be able to make the right call on the field, which is what's important.
But I feel like if you're saying, okay, they would have missed the call anyway, the way I would respond to that is, if they're going to miss the call, then don't have them review it. You know what I'm saying? Don't have this whole ordeal that's going to take place every game. And the issue is, if instant replay is going to work, they're going to have to get every call right. I mean, and that's not happening right now. And listen, I'm with you in that for the long haul, long-term, 5-10 years, I'm sure the kinks in the replay system are going to work out. But as it stands right now, today, we'd be better off not having replay. Because if this type of thing is going to keep happening, if we're still going to have missed calls, it's not worth the extra 2.5 minutes, 5 minutes every game. It's not worth having this whole complicated process, having to go frame by frame to see if an infielder had his glove closed on a baseball, even though the ball was already in his glove. It creates this whole new world that is only, I think, worth it if it means we're getting every call right, which is not happening right now.
But I think the fact that you said long-term it works sort of gives the system merit, because I don't think this is going to last the entire season. I'd be surprised if it lasts past May. And I think even after the season...
I don't know.
Even after the season, the people upstairs at Major League Baseball can look at, how we fared with one season review, change the rules to make it less ambiguous, because I think they went into the season having written rules for a different game. Like you said, we don't even know what a catch is right now, but I think it's something
but that's a huge problem. We can't not know what a catch is, and I feel like, football is this way too. Football is getting more and more complex with its replay system, and accordingly, it's getting more and more complex with its rules. We're now looking frame by frame and saying, can he perform an act common to the game once he's made this catch, and so is he out of bounds? And I feel like that's a slippery slope for baseball. If we're going to have a rule that clearly defines where a catch takes place, there's going to be something after that. I feel like to say, okay, by May or by next year when we change the rules, everything's going to be cleared up. I'm pessimistic about that actually happening.
Well, I think that the catch rule is something that is different from instant replay. I think the catch rule is something that Major League Baseball went over in February. They said, let's place an emphasis on this. That's something that happens every sport during the offseason. They talk to the umpires, the referees. They place an emphasis on one aspect of the game. I think that's something that absolutely has to be revisited. Now, I don't understand why the old sort of rule, the old catch ruling can't be used under the instant replay system. I don't see why we can't have both there.
Well, we'll see what happens. Instant replay is not going away, and I suppose we might as well get used to it. Let's move to social media. Our question this week comes from Twitter. It's at Steve E. Watt. Mr. E. Watt asked us, at Carter and Jack, what are your expectations for the upcoming NBA playoffs? Short, sweet, to the point. And when we looked at this question, what came to mind was, who do we think is going to win it all? And we disagree. Jack, who do you have winning the NBA championship?
I don't have the Miami Heat. I was torn for a long time over the Spurs Thunder. I think the Spurs are the best team in basketball. I think, over the course of the 82 regular game season, like we saw, the Spurs ended the year with the best record. The Thunder, though, present that huge matchup problem for the Spurs. We've seen it this year. The Thunder, getting the best of the Spurs in their meetings. We've seen it the years prior. So I think the Thunder will beat San Antonio in what would have to be an amazing series.
Yeah.
7 games. Thunder take it, and then Thunder take the final. I think this is Kevin Durant's year. This is the worst winning percentage the Miami Heat have had since they assembled. The Heatles came to be. And I really like Oklahoma. This is the team that can beat this Miami team.
I'd be with you if the Eastern Conference at all resembled the Western Conference, but the problem with me is you're looking at the Spurs and you're looking at the Thunder and you're saying they'll probably make it into the Western Conference Finals. They'll probably, one of those teams is going to go and make it to the NBA Finals. You look at the Heat in the East, it would be shocking if they didn't make the NBA Finals. They have such an easier route. And obviously when they go into the 7-game series to decide everything, it's between the two teams, and that's all it is. But I just feel like now Miami, which has for so long been a team that's kind of concentrated its efforts on the postseason, now doesn't even have to concentrate its efforts on the entire postseason. They're just looking at this one 7-game series in the NBA Finals because they're going to coast there. And I'm sure you agree with me on that.
I do, and I think earlier in the season it's a totally different argument. But the way the Pacers have been playing recently, they're not even a shoo-in for that Eastern Conference Finals. So yeah, I think the Heat are going to represent the Eastern Conference in the Finals. But if we're looking at who has the best chance of beating the Heat, it's probably the Spurs. Will they make it? I understand your argument completely. I just think that as well as I think the Spurs are better than the Heat, I think there are other teams in the West that can beat the Heat. Past the Spurs, I think the Thunder could beat the Heat in a 7-game series. I think even the Clippers or the Rockets, probably not the Rockets, I think the Clippers could give the Heat a great series. So, and it comes to be that maybe even in the Western Conference playoffs, if you're playing those grueling series, it makes you a better team. Maybe it doesn't hurt you in the finals. Maybe it gives you what you need because Miami's got the postseason experience over every team but the Spurs. Mm-hmm. They've been there the last 3-4 years. Mm-hmm. So maybe a team like the Thunder, who they did make the finals a couple years ago, they've never won. Maybe that great series victory over the Spurs, which it would have to be, would be a great series victory, could give them that postseason experience. Kevin Durant's going to score 40 in Game 7, so I think the Thunder are going to do it this year.
And if we're talking about expectations, looking at what the projected matchups are right now, I cannot take my eyes off of that 6-3 right now in the West. It's the Golden State Warriors and the LA Clippers, who you mentioned could challenge for a Western Conference title. But whenever you're seeing Stephen Curry play, he can just go off at any time. So I think that's going to be one of the best series to watch in the early rounds of the playoffs.
Well, I'd have to agree, but when we're talking about expectations, I couldn't even pinpoint that as a standout series because, in my opinion, every series from the first round to the conference finals in the Western Conference is a magnificent matchup.
Yeah.
I think we're looking.
And it's almost the opposite in the East.
It is almost the opposite. When we're looking at expectations, I am expecting a phenomenal NBA postseason from at least half the country west of the Mississippi.
And who knows? I mean, it might turn out to be the exact opposite thing, and certainly any upset coming out of the East would be shocking. But when you have such a stacked Western Conference such as this, it's going to make for some very dramatic postseason basketball.
Although, giving the East some love, I think the Bulls will not only get out of the first round, I think the Bulls can really give the Heat, or not,
really?
Sorry, not the Heat, I'm sorry, the Pacers.
Okay.
Because that's right as we stand, that's the second round matchup. Right. Bulls is a 4, Pacers would be 1. I think the Bulls and Pacers play a really similar style of basketball, and right now the Bulls are playing that style of basketball better. So I would not be surprised if we saw Bulls Heat final. No, the Bulls can't challenge the Heat.
Right.
Yes, the Heat will win, but the Bulls can challenge the Pacers.
The Bulls are a team that you can just never count out in these situations, even when Derrick Rose is just falling off the face of planet Earth. That is it for the first half of our show. We'll be back in 30 seconds with more What's It To Ya. We are talking hockey with our friend Jake, as well as Michael Pineda. They found a foreign substance on his hand, and nobody really cares. We're going to talk about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for Major League Baseball. What's It To Ya comes back right after this.
Slow down.
Slow down and move over.
And move over.
When you see lights,
vests,
or reflectors,
please give us some room. Slow down and move over.
when you need us.
we've got your back.
Do you have ours?
You got our back?
You got ours? You got our back?
Please, slow down.
And move over.
My songs know what you did in the dark.
And welcome back. This is What's It To Ya. I am Carter Rediel, and he is Jack Worth. We're going to move back to baseball as we begin the second half of our show, and we're going to talk some Yankees baseball. Michael Pineda looked brilliant in his last outing for the New York Yankees. He pitched the first 4 innings without allowing a hit. His slider was working masterfully. He was throwing gas on his fastball. And then we found out he might have had a little extra help. Look at this picture. That's a foreign substance right there on the heel of his pitching hand. Pineda said it was dirt. That looks like some of the shiniest, stickiest dirt I've ever seen in my life. It looks like it's pretty obviously pine tar. But the interesting thing here, Jack, is nobody really cared. The umpire said, well, the Red Sox didn't say anything about it. The Yankees said, well, it's not a big deal. MLB kind of shied away from saying anything about it at all. This is expressly against the rules. The rulebook states that anybody with a foreign substance on his hand not only should be thrown out of the game immediately, but suspended. Is it a big deal that nobody really cares?
It's, things like this are only a big deal because we're not on the field. We don't know what happens in Major League Clubhouse. We don't know the routine of Major League pitchers. Things like this are a big deal based on how the opposing players react, because they can give us insight as to say whether or not this is something that happens all the time, whether this is uncalled for. And I think right here we have our clear answer in the fact that the Red Sox had nothing to say about it. They were not complaining. They didn't alert the umpires of some substance on his hand. So that to me it makes me think that the Red Sox don't care because this is probably something that happens.
Yeah. And it's probably something that their pitchers do. I mean, remember John Lester was seen, I believe it was in the World Series last year, where they saw that he might have had a little bit of a pine tar on the glove, of the thumb of his glove, and you could see him rubbing his fingers on it, getting his baseball rubbed up with the pine tar. I think the interesting thing here is that the players have almost drawn a hard line in the rules of the game right now, where they're saying if you're using a foreign substance to increase your grip on the pitcher's mound, as long as you're discreet about it, it's no big deal. If you're using it to alter the flight of the ball, that's a different story. But if it's cold and you want to harden up your grip with some pine tar, I think the players, the verdict is that's okay, as long as you're not obvious about it.
And well, I mean, using the court of common sense, I feel like it's something that should be okay. Batters can use batting gloves. They put a little pine tar on the bat. It gives them a better grip of the bat. Football players are allowed to wear a glove. It helps them. It helps the football stick to their hands making catches. So I don't see a problem with pitchers trying to get a better grip on the baseball. They're not altering the flight of the ball. Hopefully, I think that sort of crosses a line when you're making the ball move in ways that aren't natural.
Right.
But if you're just trying to assist your grip on the ball personally, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, and pine tar specifically is used to get a better grip, and typically in cold weather. And I think, the rules are the rules, but if all the players agree on one thing, then that's the new rule, and I don't see any problem with it if all of the players agree on it.
And well, you mentioned Major League Baseball, because if we're talking about the rules being the rules, then it's something that Major League Baseball absolutely, because they are the rules.
Yeah.
They should be the ones cracking down on it. The fact they're shying away is even more, evidence to the fact that this is something that happens. Everyone in baseball, pitchers and hitters alike, have sort of accepted it. They're okay with it. The umpires are okay with it. So as a fan, I see no reason why I shouldn't be okay with it.
Yeah, basically what Joe Torre said on it was, there's not much we could do because nobody complained about it, so we're not going to come in and step in and ruin everything for everybody. And the umpires said, well, no, basically the same thing. The Red Sox didn't complain about it to us. So if that's the way it's going to be, then that's the way it's going to be. It's fine, and I think it kind of adds a little level of intrigue to the game that wasn't there. And it seems like pine tar's just been there for a very, very long time. So that's just an interesting topic of conversation. A big shift in sports here. We're going to move from baseball to swimming, from American sports to the Olympics, and we're going to talk about Michael Phelps, who has just come out of retirement, because apparently Michael Phelps was retired, and now he's not. He's come in, and I think as soon as you heard this news, Jack, you came to me and said that that was total BS. He never intended to retire in the first place. Why do you think that?
Well, I was totally unsurprised, first of all, when he came out of retirement, because Michael Phelps is a swimmer. I think, and he's an athlete, and he's a competitor. I think he wants to compete in the Olympics. I don't think he wants to train every day. It's something that we saw. It was a big story leading up to the 2012 games. It was that, Phelps can't wait to retire, get away from spending 9 hours a day in the pool, just be a regular 20-something-year-old. But he does want to swim in the Olympics. I think he likes winning gold medals. So I think he's happy to take 2 years off of training every day. He's happy to let the world championships or whatever the mid-year swimming contests are, because when he's thinking about his legacy, which is what he's thinking about when he's returning, because Michael Phelps...
Really? You really think that this is a legacy thing?
I think it's a legacy thing, because Michael Phelps is starting to look at his legacy as, is he not only the greatest swimmer ever, is he the greatest Olympian ever?
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if he can add to his legacy, because if he's going to come back, he's not going to be the swimmer that he once was. He's going to swim competitively. He's probably going to win a medal or two, but he's not going to be dominant Michael Phelps. I don't think it's going to have that big of an impact on his legacy.
I don't think the unretiring thing is legacy. I'm saying that if he was always planning on 2016, the fact that retiring for 2 years and then coming back won't hurt his legacy, because he's missing the World Indoor Junior Champ, whatever they compete in swimming.
But I don't see where you're coming from with this whole he always intended to come back from the moment he retired. Just because we've seen so many other personalities in sports do this. I mean, Brett Favre is the obvious example, but sometimes with guys like Michael Phelps, they retire and then suddenly there's this void in their life that they think they can fill. I mean, Michael Phelps was going to try and become a big time golfer. That was his thing when he retired. And it didn't happen, and he wanted to come back to swimming. coming, and I think that makes sense. I mean, and I think the interesting thing about this whole story is that he actually returned to training last fall and joined the drug testing program again, which should have kind of been a sign to all of us that maybe he's going to come back to the professional circuit. But I don't think that this was a whole premeditated thing. I think you're looking a little too far into this.
I mean, where I'm coming from this, I don't know what Michael Phelps is thinking. I could be 100% off the mark. What I'm thinking is if he wants some time off, which I think he did, he's earned it.
And so you would do this if you were in Michael Phelps' position?
Yeah. You wouldn't? Michael Phelps probably just had the best 18 months of his life, gets to come back and then still swim in the Olympics.
He hasn't officially said that he's coming back in 2016, but I would say there's, a 99% chance that he's coming back in Rio? I mean, if he's looking at his legacy, right? So he'll be returning to competition, I believe it's April 24th, just a few events, and hopefully he'll provide some Olympic drama. Hopefully he'll help out my Olympic fantasy team if that ever comes around again. We are going to now move to our Idiot in the Studio segments. Our first guest, far from an idiot, he's a hockey expert. Our good friend Jake is here. Jake, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks. I'm really interested in that Olympic fantasy team when that starts.
We broke it in. I had to go in on the Excel spreadsheet. It was great. A few of my friends, wonderful idea.
I'll have to get in on that next time.
Yeah, I didn't do it for Sochi though. So I want to talk. You're a hockey fan, and we hardly ever talk some hockey on the show, so it's great to have you on. One of the big stories that we've been looking at, especially here in Jersey, is Martin Brodeur. His last game for the Devils was recently, last game at the Prudential Center. And the big question is he going to retire? Are the Devils going to keep him around? Or is the doomsday scenario going to happen where Marty Brodeur is going to wind up suiting up for another team because he wants to play 30 games a year? What do you think should happen? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, ideally, what I'd like to happen is see him come back, backup role, maybe mentor Corey Schneider for a bit longer. But, just watching him past few weeks, seeing all the interviews he gives, he always seems to, want to come back. He loves playing. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be tough, just the idea of him in another jersey. He is the New Jersey Devils. Everything the New Jersey Devils have done successfully is basically due to Martin Brodeur.
You sound like you're leading in that direction, though, that he's going to suit up for another team.
I think he'll do that. The only issue is I don't see what other team would want him because of the amount of playing time he wants, and I don't really think that there's any team out there that wants that 42-year-old goaltender who they're going to give 30, 40 games a year that they couldn't give to a prospect or a rookie.
Well, I think that's the problem with the Devils this year. We saw, you talk about Martin Brodeur possibly mentoring, guiding Corey Schneider through a season. I think they tried that this year, and it ended up they both started 41 games, so they both started 50% of the season. And at the end of the day, Marty was unhappy about the minutes he played, and I bet Corey was unhappy about the minutes he played too. So it sort of ended up with this lose-lose. So I don't think the Devils want to go through that again. I think they believe that they have a goaltender that they want to start every day in Corey Schneider. And as much as, you have to respect Martin Brodeur, I don't think they want to give a 42-year-old that many games played.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I'm in Marty's position, I'm going to try and get as many games played as possible, though. And this is interesting because it's kind of the greats of the game often take a different look at when to retire, whether you go out on top or whether you say, I want to play until I can't play anymore. And it seems like Martin Brodeur has chosen the latter option here.
I'm more interested in what's actually going to be happening on the ice in the playoffs. Do you have anything in the first round that stands out? Something you got picked, no one sees coming?
I could see the Stars beating the Ducks. I really like, Jamie Benn, they have Nichushkin, they have Tyler Seguin, and I really think that they could put a punch into the Ducks.
Okay, so Stars win that first round series against the Ducks. They go up against someone because no one's sure how the bracket works.
Exactly.
Do the Stars have any chance then of continuing a run into the finals?
I don't think so. I think just the way the West is stacked, you have the Blackhawks, you have the Blues, you have the Sharks and Kings. I don't think any team in the lower seeds has a chance.
What about the East? Jack mentioned Boston has kind of just been running the show in the Eastern Conference. Do you think anybody's there who can challenge the Bruins?
Maybe the Penguins if they get healthy with Crosby and Malkin, but the way the Bruins are built with Tuukka Rask in the back, Zdeno Chara, and then Patrice Bergeron in the front, I think that they are the team to be in the East.
Okay, so we've got our 4 semifinalists, it seems like. You're going chalk in the East with Bruins and Penguins. And now give us the West. Who are the conference finalists, and who represents the Western Conference for the Stanley Cup?
I gotta say conference finals, the Kings versus Blackhawks. I really like both teams. They have really good players, a lot of possession. The Kings, I think, would be the team to come out of the West, only because of just they have that extra gear that they can turn on during the playoffs. They look like a team where it's just, 82 exhibition games. When do we get to the playoffs? Let's go.
The real season begins, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm picking the last year's champ, the Chicago Blackhawks. They didn't finish the regular season with the best record in the NHL. They're not even the top seed in their conference. But when you look at this roster, it looks a lot like an all-star team. They've won the Cup last year. They've won the Cup once before that. How can you tell me the Chicago Blackhawks can't lift it again?
I think the Chicago Blackhawks, they have a good chance of doing that. But just watching the Kings, the way they play, they almost beat the Blackhawks last year, and the Blackhawks had that same team. And yes, the Blackhawks did end up winning, but Jonathan Quick, he's just unstoppable in the playoffs.
My perspective of I'm looking at who I'm going to pick to win the title, I understand where you guys are coming from. Anything can happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it's hard for me to go against Boston right now just because they've had such a dominant regular season. That has to be worth something in my book. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a big upset, but if I'm going to say what's most likely to happen, I think the Bruins have to be the ones lifting the cup. Well, we're running out of time here, and I want to actually stick with hockey as I get to this week's parting shot. There's this great line from a movie, Kicking and Screaming. If you've seen it, it's Will Ferrell, Robert Duvall. It's a great movie. And there's one point Robert Duvall says to Will Ferrell while he's gloating about beating him in a game, and Will Ferrell comes in and says, I almost won. And Robert Duvall responds, yeah, well, what's it called when you almost win? Oh, yeah, losing. I think it's great because that's an extremely funny line, but it's also 100% true. No matter how close you get in sports, the reward goes to the winning team, and that's final. Except, of course, in the National Hockey League. That's right, the National Hockey League gives points to teams that lose. If you lose a game in overtime or you lose a game in a shootout, that's 1 point and 2 points for a victory, and I think this is ludicrous. Not to say I don't understand why it exists. The reason why it's there is because the shootout isn't really considered a good hockey thing. It's basically a crapshoot, 3 shots going. It's not a hockey game, and they don't want the whole game to ride on it. So their solution is to give 1 point to the loser. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I think it's an easy thing to remedy because what on earth is wrong with ties? The NHL had ties back in the day. Why not do it like soccer? Soccer avoids penalty kicks at all costs. They only use it when they absolutely have to decide the outcome of the game. Why not get rid of the shootout, extend the overtime to maybe 8 minutes, switch the lines to make the longer changes, make more scoring in overtime, and then if it's end of overtime and the score is tied, it's a tie. Big deal. I don't understand this point system. If you look at the records for an NHL team, it's a nightmare. How many games did they win? How many games did they lose? And how many games did they not lose, but they almost won? And now I'm seeing teams get vaulted into the NHL playoffs after losing in a close game. A loss vaults a team into the postseason. It doesn't make any sense. Either have the shootout decide the whole game or play with ties. You can't really go halfway on this. That's my take. What's it to you? And that is our show. We will be back same bat time, same bat channel 1 week from now, hopefully with one of you from social media joining us for our segment. Make sure to tweet us at Carter and Jack. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Carter and Jack and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All that jazz. Keep blowing up our pages and tune in to next week's edition of the show. Jack and I will see you then.